Well, Jack, when we started covering Survivor Panama, I knew that this season was really defined by its characters. I said this last week. This isn't a season where you're going to have crazy strategic gameplay, but the character moments are what make it so memorable. And there's a lot of iconic people on this season. And one person that I underrated going into it is the Shane Powers. This is the episode of Shane. This is Survivor Analytics. Welcome back. My name's Clyde. I'm the true expert. With me, as always, is the voice of the people and Jack. Jack, how's it going?
What's up, party people? I haven't smoked in 7 days, and I'm miserable. I want to quit the show. If only I could have known what I was getting into.
What a great episode. We said it last week. Shane's nicotine withdrawal symptoms are hitting their absolute peak right now, and it's making for great television. Melinda goes home in this episode, yet Melinda is not the main character at all. All of this is told from the perspective of Shane.
Yeah, I feel terrible for Melinda. I mean, first and foremost, this sucks. Like, this was one of those tribals where I was like praying for the result that I didn't think, like, I was praying for the result I felt certain would happen to not happen. That wasn't clear. Let me try again.
Okay.
I was really hopeful that what I felt would almost definitely happen would not happen. I don't think that's clearer, but whatever. This was tough to watch. I feel really bad for Melinda. I'm sure she did not return. You know, second boot.
You'll need
on
to
an
wait
old
and
season.
see.
Boy. But yeah, this was. There are train wrecks that are fun to watch, but this felt like a train wreck. Part of it was fun to watch. Part of it was like, oh, this is a train wreck and things are being destroyed and I hope everybody's okay, right? There was a personal element to this where I felt kind of bad.
Yeah, I felt bad that you had this whole dynamic where the two oldest women on the tribe were essentially told before tribal council, one of you is going home, which is just such a common trend in Survivor, both old school Survivor and new school Survivor. When it comes to Shane, though, I had so much fun with him this week, which is weird. Most of the time when there's a contestant who asks to quit the show, I get really annoyed by them. Back in Survivor 45, when Hannah asked to leave the game, she received so much backlash from the fandom. But that's not always the case. When Shane asked to quit, no one really criticized him to the same degree when people watched this season back in 2006, and even today, people still look back on Shane favorably as a character. Him asking to quit, did that affect your opinion of him at all this week? Or
of course.
were you hoping, okay, it did.
I will never be okay with anybody asking to quit Survivor. Because you know, the only time I would ever be okay with it, the only exception to that rule would be season 1. Because otherwise, you know what you're getting into. And if you want to quit, why did you sign up? Why did you go through the rigorous casting process? Why did you make arrangements with your family and loved ones and job to take a month off, right? Why did you prepare to starve and compete and be on television if you weren't ready to actually face the music when you got there, right? If you are somebody with a substance addiction, why did you do this? Or if you come in, you know what, here's where I would have respected Shane, because I don't at all.
What?
Yeah.
I'm a Shane fan. Okay.
That's okay. The only way that I would have come out of this episode being a Shane fan is if he had said, wow, I am really going through it. I'm feeling all of the symptoms of nicotine withdrawal, right? But you know what? Smoking is bad for me. I want to be here, and I want to show that not only can you overcome adversity, but that I can quit smoking by going through this on the island, right? If he faced it head on and took on the challenge and said, you know what, I'm going to suffer, but it will be worthwhile, that would be kind of heroic. Instead, he's a whiny brat. Like they lose the challenge and he has an outburst. He's rude. He's complaining. He's Like, I make good money. I don't need to be here. Like, oh, my son has a football game. Like, yeah, you knew that coming on the show. Let's turn this around. Why are you a Shane fan? Because that doesn't make any sense.
I'm a Shane fan because Shane is a disaster. I know people in my life who have a similar vibe as Shane. And I think especially in modern Survivor, we rarely see people like Shane, contestants who are completely unprepared for the show and have no business being out there. And I think when you look at Survivor history, a lot of people would make the same claim that you just made, that if you decide to quit, that automatically tanks your legacy. But I don't think that's necessarily true. You might remember in Survivor 46, at the final 10, Q asked to leave the game. He asked the other players to vote him out at Tribal Council, and they didn't do it.
And now he's coming back.
Today, Q is not only this iconic character of the new era, but he was invited back by production. And this was after Jeff changed the rules. So I think if you decide to quit the game, you don't get your torch snuffed. You just walk out. But despite that, they're still going to bring back Q. And I think the same philosophy extends to Shane, where if you're a fun character, that will overshadow you attempting to quit or leave the island. So I don't know. I think when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, the question here is, who would you rather watch on Survivor Panama? Melinda or Shane? And even though you might not like Shane's actions, you have to admit you would rather watch him moving forward.
Okay, I think where the disconnect is when I say I'm a big fan of somebody on Survivor, I'm thinking of it in terms of this is somebody I like watching compete.
Okay.
In that sense, not a fan. Not whatsoever. But in the sense I think you're coming from, which is, this is damn good television. Yeah, I'm a Shane fan. Okay, I'll give him that. It's fun to watch him have these breakdowns, right? And I'm glad we get more, and I hope he continues to spiral, right? And from the next time on, we'll get some. We haven't started talking about the episode yet.
Yeah, we can dive in, but I just feel like we had to hit on Shane at the beginning because he's the main character of this whole thing.
The tone.
I wish I looked at the confessional counts because I bet that Shane has the most confessionals out of anybody on the cast right now.
For sure.
But jumping right in, first segment that we get in this episode is your classic old school Survivor thunderstorm. The contestants are getting drenched, and we open with the older men's tribe who last week were shown excelling in camp life. I wish we got some more content here from the young guys because that was the group that was playing baseball and neglecting their shelter entirely. I think we get a couple segments of Bobby attempting to drink water out of the shelter. But other than that, you can see that the elements are starting to wear on these contestants, which is just a little bit refreshing coming out of the new era.
Clyde, we don't have merch yet. Let me pitch you on some merch right now.
Ooh, okay.
I want a t-shirt that says bring back suffering.
With no logo, with no Survivor indication, just Calibri text on a white t-shirt. Bring back suffering.
Survivor Analytics, bring back suffering. That's
okay.
Because it is so good to watch people actually trying to survive, right? I know it's not the core of the game. I know it's the atmospheric, the secondary piece. But, oh, it's great. I love watching shelters get flooded, camps turn into mud, people failing to fish, right? All of that is so great, and I'm completely here for it. This was really spectacular. We basically watch all of these groups suffer together. And, you know, the older women are in a muddy lake. They have a hard time making fire without whatever her name was that got voted out last week.
Tina,
thank you.
You already forgot Tina?
I collapsed my notes from last week. I didn't have time to scroll up. Yeah, everybody's having a hard time. The younger women seem to be doing okay, right? Everyone else is wet and tired. The younger women, we need to touch on this just a little bit. They get some papayas down from a tree. I'm very uncomfortable with the way this section is shot and edited. the whole older women, younger women, older men, like the age and gender thing is already not great, especially with the blurred lines of what counts as older or younger. But we're watching these younger women eating these papayas really up close. There's a lot of like, yummy sounds. And then one of them compares eating a papaya to an orgasm. And it
Wait, what?
yes.
Did I miss that line entirely? Okay.
I think it's the rocket scientist, Missile.
Misty?
Missile, yeah.
Misty the Missile?
Misty the Missile, I think, literally compares eating a papaya to an orgasm. And I was like, this is uncomfortable. It feels like, oh gosh, Natalie White and the shower reward.
Yeah. Jack, what a pull. Who would have thought? You're bringing
Come
things
on.
back from Samoa that aren't just Russell Hantz putting the socks in the fire? I'm so
Well, listen.
surprised by that.
I mean, the only things that stick in my head with old Survivor seasons are suffering and problematic pieces of production's work. And so if it's bad in either sense, I remember it. Yeah, anyway, I just wanted to flag that as a little gross.
Yeah,
Just
the only
you.
thing I noticed from that younger women's tribe is that Misty is absolutely covered in bug bites.
Oh,
I think that might be why I missed the line, because as she's eating the papaya, her entire arm is just covered in them, which you just don't see as much anymore. Last thing I'll mention when it comes to the suffering side of the show, and we already hit this in the opening with Shane, he's really struggling at this point. He talks about how his life is spinning out of control, he misses his son's football practices, he's having a difficult time with that transition from the chaos of his work life to the monotony of Survivor. And you mentioned this line earlier, but Shane questions if all of this is even worth it, because he'll make the money that he needs to make outside the show. And this is showing some bias on my end, because when Shane said that, I kind of raised an eyebrow. I thought, this is a guy that has not come across as very stable through the first 2 episodes. I don't know if I fully believe that Shane is out there making millions outside Survivor. But here's a fun fact for you.
boy,
Shane
here we
does
go.
make a lot of money outside of Survivor.
Okay.
He is a music marketer of some kind. In 2015, he worked with Tyler, the Creator, on Cherry Bomb. He's also featured on the track Buffalo on that album. And then he also worked on 2 tracks in the 2017 album Flower Boy. And I can send you a photo. We might put this up on our social media pages. There are photos of Shane Powers hanging out with Tyler, the Creator, which is insane.
That's crazy. Cherry Bomb goes hard. That's a great track. So he does make a lot of money. Why is he here? Go home, Shane.
I'm okay with
Anyway.
him being around, but it's
Yeah.
just crazy to me that he was spot on in the fact that he doesn't need Survivor at the end of the day.
No, he does not. Okay, so let's move on because it's time for a challenge. But, hey everybody, it's episode 2. Drop your buffs. What? Now, okay. I understand now why we never used the tribe names last week, right? I understand why Jeff didn't bother and kept saying older women, younger men, right? Because they didn't matter. What? Why bother?
Yeah.
Can you justify this to me at all?
It's the same thing as Cook Islands, right? You have this twist, you divide people up by age and demographics just to kind of get viewers in the door, and once they're there, you can kind of do whatever you want with the cast. So it's really just a gimmick at the end of the day, but I made this take last week. This season already has a theme around it. Exile Island is the main twist. They'd never done a season-long twist like this before. Production didn't need to add this 4 tribal format on top of it. And if I'm Tina and I'm sitting home watching this, I'm pissed. Because I'm the only one that went home in that format.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an annoying gimmick, but I do think it produces something interesting. So we're going from 4 tribes down to 2 with a schoolyard pick, right? I didn't write down who did the picking or who started, but we get 2 tribes, orange Lamina and purple Kasaya. Do you know what those mean?
I do not. What are they?
Well, that's such a good question, Clyde. You know, obviously, Lamina means leaf, as everybody knows. in Spanish. Or if you look at Google AI, it says the mine or gold wealth, which is completely wrong. Casaya is a province of Panama. And when you Google Casaya, the top result is the Survivor Wiki.
Okay.
So,
well, I guess a famous tribe. I don't remember every logistic of the schoolyard pick. Have we done one of these before on the podcast, or is this the first time that they've decided the tribes this way?
I do not remember.
I don't think we had a season like this. The only other one that was close that comes to mind is Survivor China. They had a swap where each tribe got to pick 2 people from the opposing tribe to join their group.
Yeah.
And that's where you had the whole dynamic where both of them were trying to throw to vote out the outsiders.
Yeah.
I like the schoolyard pick here.
Me too.
Partially because of the way that the draft ends up working out. Because do you know who was the first overall pick of the entire draft?
It's Shane.
It's Shane. And I think that's great. Danielle takes him. And this doesn't spoil too much. I think you already kind of got this sense with the way that the season is playing out. One of the biggest criticisms of Survivor Panama is the logistics of this swap. Where if you look at Casaya and Lamina, it feels like Casaya has all of the insane characters there. They have Shane, who's going through nicotine withdrawal. They have Courtney, the fire dancer, who drew the heart around the turtle last week.
We have Eris,
we got Aris, the yoga
Aris.
instructor that was doing that exercise where they were putting their hands over each other. And they have Sari, who we know is coming back for a 5th time. Who is the notable character on Lamina?
We have the astronaut fighter pilot allegiance.
Yeah, Terry and Dan, but none of them, at least in my opinion, bring nearly as much entertainment value to the show as those other contestants.
No.
So
we have a tribe of people playing with their heart, and we have a tribe of people here to play, right? Like, we have practical and we have emotional. I mean, to reduce it pretty dramatically. But here's what I find really interesting with the schoolyard pick. We have 15 people, 2 tribes of 7. Last man standing, my boy Bruce. Bruce gets to spend the next 3 days on Exile Island alone. At the end of that time, he will fill in the next, whichever tribe loses the next immunity challenge, he will replace whoever they send home. So, if you are a tribe with a weak link, you can send someone home and get Bruce. It is a very interesting situation where I don't think anyone seems to really be thinking about him, right? He is the last pick. Nobody talks about him. We see him for 4.5 seconds on Exile Island doing his yoga, or not yoga. It's not Tai Chi, but I didn't write down what martial art it is.
Yeah, it's some kind of martial art. I didn't write it down either. I tried getting it, but it wasn't included in the captions for the episode.
Yeah, I was watching on sped up, so I didn't catch it either. But I think this is a really interesting situation where he gets this reward of immunity, of a chance at the idol, and then whichever tribe ends up getting him could be in a stronger position because they could eliminate a weaker link and pull him in, right? We don't really get to see it that way, but that's what it could be. I would like to see this come back in the new era.
I actually like this gimmick. It is weird that we're giving Bruce a free round of immunity. That just feels very rare on Survivor, where you can just survive 3 days without even needing to compete in a challenge. He's actually kind of rewarded by not being desirable in the schoolyard pick.
Mm-hmm.
But there's pros and cons to it, right? He gets the pros of 1 free round of immunity, an opportunity to search for that hidden idol. But there's the cons of he's going to walk into the Casaya tribe next week where there's already these established alliance dynamics. So I think there's a nice yin and yang there for Bruce. It's worth noting he doesn't find the idol on Exile.
Spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler. He doesn't get the idol. On Cook Islands, Yule found the idol in episode 2. So I guess the Panama cast is not as tuned in as they were.
I want to say that was a spoiler for Jack, because here's what I was hoping, is that next week we would see Bruce in the camp go, I did find the idol, and have a flashback. So...
Oh, No, those
Okay.
flashbacks don't exist until the new era.
Okay. Okay. Well, to drum along with the episode here, the challenge is a reward challenge for fishing gear, not bait, hooks, not rope, string, fishing line, spear, and a raft. Which is kind of interesting that they're giving them a raft, but I don't think we've seen that in the fishing gear before. The challenge is basically an obstacle course woven with these long wooden snakes, which is pretty interesting. These snakes are then have to be carried by one person. So there's 7 of them, I think, over the course of the route for each tribe. The entire group has to go through the whole course, and one person just getting more and more burdened. They have to climb over some stuff, crawl under some stuff, go over a ladder, and then, in classic Survivor fashion, go through a mud pit and immediately into a pit of leaves, which, I'll say this, in a jungle environment feels dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Spiders galore in that pit of leaves, I would assume. But did you like this challenge? Let me gauge where you're at in the classic Survivor challenge atmosphere, right? You're not high on them anyway, but how do you like these?
I actually wasn't super high on either of the challenges that we saw this week, mainly because they are hyper focused on individuals within the tribe rather than the collective unit of the tribe. So this one, yes, everyone has to go through the obstacle course, but there's a clear leader in who's going to hold the snakes. There's one person whose role is way more important than everybody else. Then in the immunity challenge, you have a bunch of people bucketing water out of the boats, but what's way more important are the people underwater dragging the boats to shore. So I feel like a lot of these challenges have put a lot of emphasis on who is your strongest member rather than who is your weakest, which I generally find more interesting.
That's a very good way of saying that. That's really, really clear and really fair.
When it comes to this reward challenge, though, my favorite aspect is the representatives for each tribe. You would think you're going to take your strongest physical person because you have these big wooden snakes. You're going to put those wooden snakes on their back. Lamina smartly picks Nick. Bigger guy, I get it. Kasaya takes Courtney. And I wish we saw the discussion from Kasaya, because knowing what we know about Courtney, my guess is that she voluntold the rest of the tribe, saying, I'm doing this no matter what. I don't think that they had a democratic process to pick Courtney there.
Yeah, it felt abrupt, and I was pretty shocked. And shockingly, or not so shockingly, Lamina ends up winning the challenge, which feels very straightforward. Yeah, that was a weird call, and I wonder if there was any discussion or if she just said, I've got it. And maybe, honestly, maybe she just grabbed the first snake, right? And said, dibs, and then once she's got it, everyone's like, okay, I guess you're doing it. But, I mean, this group has just come together. Who knows how long they have between forming as a tribe and starting the challenge, right? It could be really abrupt. But Lamina wins the first reward, and we are moving on to meet our 2 tribes here.
I'm down to start with Lamina because I feel like there's less to talk about there.
Yeah, let's do that.
2 big notes I have from Lamina. First is strategic. So it looks like Nick and Austin, the 2 young guys, are working the middle of this tribe. They're receiving offers from the young woman in Misty and Sally, and also the older guys who we mentioned earlier, Dan and Terry.
Who want a men's alliance.
Yeah, the bros can all get together.
Yeah.
And at first, I wasn't sure where they were going to align. We don't have a lot of info on any of these contestants right now. But then we get to the fishing sequence. And I think that could play into their decision for whenever they go to tribal council. Because Sally and Nick take that raft out into the ocean. They just won this fishing reward. They can finally have their Aussie segment and, get some food for the tribe. And unfortunately, Sally loses. It's like what's that thing called? It's just a fishing spear?
I can't tell if it's a spear gun
She launches it into the ocean. It falls to the very bottom. Quick criticism with production because they missed that moment. We hear the audio of Sally losing it, but we don't actually see it happen.
Yeah. So, okay. Taking a spear for a trial run. This is going to be launched, right? There is a propulsion element to this instrument. You are about to test drive something very pointy and dangerous. Why did you decide to wait until you're over a mile of ocean? Like they wait so long that the spear is irretrievable because it has fallen so deep down into the water, right? Not a good call on her part. And everyone is fairly nice about it, right? She feels very bad. Everyone, nobody is rude. This is where Shane would have probably physically attacked her, right? Like, he would have snapped and been like, you took away our chance. It would have been a much uglier confrontation. And instead, everyone is very nice. And it's like, hey, we've got the other stuff. We can still fish. It's just going to be harder now. But privately, somebody has a confessional. I'm not sure who it is.
I think it's Terry.
I was going to say Terry. It's where basically he is convinced if they had that spear, they would be eating a lot of fish, right? So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens there. It makes sense for the younger guys, I think, from a strategic point of view, to stick with the ladies and make themselves more valuable, right? Over time and pick off other physical players. But we'll see what happens.
I'm going to pitch an idea to you, and
Please.
you tell me if this is too crazy. If you're Sally, no one else is out in the ocean other than you and Nick. Could Sally go back to the beach and say, Nick lost the spear, he's the one that blew it for everybody? Because if I don't see it happen, I would assume Nick is going to be the person that jumps into the water first to catch the first fish. He was the one carrying the snakes in the challenge. Could she put the blame on Nick, and would people buy it?
I think that would be a really bold move. You could sell it, but you're gambling, right? Because you're gambling burning a bridge so early. Early. And you now have somebody who is going to be calling you a liar for the next few days at least, right? Because you might not go to tribal anytime soon. And you could have somebody saying, you lied about me, and haranguing you and be like, come clean, right? I think it would go badly. I'm going to say no. It's not a Yeah, I'm going to say no.
You're probably right, especially since Nick and Austin are the ones playing the middle right now. If that was Dan or Terry that went out on the water, then you could probably point the finger at them and try to advance yourself strategically. But
yeah, and I
just thought it'd be a fun moment, something that we could get from Lamina.
It would be real spicy.
Yeah, because, I don't know, I just feel like a lot of the best moments from this episode all came from Kasaya.
Yeah, so let's shift over there. Shane says he's 34, but going on 12. Gross. And there's a very clear breakdown on this beach. We have an animal shot of, obviously, a green iguana on the beach looking solitary, right? Because you know where iguanas don't really belong? On the beach. They're jungle creatures, not beach creatures. Similarly...
No.
Oh, we're back, baby. Suri and Melinda are iguanas out of the forest, fish out of water. Call them what you will. I have always said iguanas out of the forest, but they are isolated. They are not, feeling good in this tribe, and they shouldn't be because Shane has put together a young alliance. Obviously, Suri and Melinda are not older, but this alliance skews immature. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
It's about a maturity, not an age thing. Shane, Danielle, Aris, and Courtney start to come together, and we'll see what happens there. That's all I have is this, iguana in the out of the forest situation.
I'll say that group of four makes that alliance, but Shane is not subtle about it. He doesn't say, hey, let's work together. We can run the game moving forward. He wants to make a meaningful alliance right now. He swears on his son's life, which by 2006 Survivor standards means a lot more than it does today. He goes a step further and he tells those players that if they screw him over, he will find them after the show and kill them.
Yeah.
Which also feels like something that you wouldn't be allowed to say on Modern Survivor.
No, but I'm here for it. I'm fine with it. I think it's good to have somebody threatening violence. Hashtag bring back suffering. Get in the comments, everybody. But I'm here for it. Do you want to go to the challenge?
I'll throw out one more thing about Courtney before the challenge, and that's that she's already established herself as the most annoying person at the Kasaya camp. Cirie hops in confessional. She's making fun of the way that Courtney speaks. And Courtney is talking to the other contestants. And I'm not sure if she's talking about where she lives in California or if she's just using 2006 slang that I've never heard of before. She describes herself as gangster Hollywood and Playboy liquor. I don't know what either of those phrases mean. Are those locations or are those adjectives?
Okay, I have found it. Playboy Liquor is a liquor store that used to be on Yucca Street in Hollywood. Gangster Hollywood was basically like the part of LA that was like very high crime around this liquor store. From what I've been able to find, here's a little thing. Playboy Liquor, corner of Yucca and Wilcox, was one of the scariest streets in Hollywood. So many drug deals went down that there were cameras strung along the street in the 90s, which was not typical. And top comment 79 weeks ago, meth addicts run amok. So it might not be a great neck of the woods still, but...
Okay. I feel like that doesn't fit the vibe the way that Courtney says it.
No, I would not have thought that.
She's talking about gangster Hollywood and Playboy Liquor like in a very positive light in this part of the episode. Okay.
Well, so what year did this season come out?
2006.
Okay. In 2007, it was being pretty actively gentrified, from what I'm able to see. So it looks like it was really bad in the 90s, but it's kind of like if you moved into a not great neighborhood that used to be really bad, but is on the up and up. And you'd be like, oh, this place used to be terrible, but now it's great, right?
Yeah.
And getting some street cred. So maybe it's something like that. But
okay. I'm ready for the challenge then.
All right. This challenge is crazy. Transport a zombie head down the beach, or up onto the beach, I should say. Contestants have to start in a sinking boat that is actively filling with water. They have to bail it out and paddle their way to shore as two members dive down, carrying a heavy chest that is anchoring their boat, carrying that chest up to shore as well. This is a tough challenge, really physical. Once they get to the beach, they just have to put the head on the skeleton. That's it. I like this challenge. Simple, straightforward. I think they spent too much time fixated on the anchor part of it, which was the more important element, but at the same time, the less interesting element. I was having a lot more fun watching these people frantically bailing out these sinking boats, which, feels like a symbol for our democracy, but whatever. It was a good challenge. It was an old school. I like a boat challenge. It reminds me of the Cook Islands Cannonball Challenge a little bit.
That's a great one.
But yeah, I had fun with it. Nothing super interesting to report. Lamina pulls ahead pretty early, wins handily, and Shane is frustrated at the end and is like shouting in frustration into the air.
He's frustrated at the end, and he's frustrated at the beginning. Before the challenge even begins, Jeff asks both tribes how they're feeling. Misty, over on Lamina, gives her typical Survivor answer. It's a non-answer where she said, we're feeling positive, we're feeling optimistic moving forward. Shane throws the entire Kasaya tribe under the bus. He says that they are in a dire situation, which is pretty funny considering that Lamina just lost all of the supplies that they won in the reward challenge. Like, technically, these two tribes are on the same playing field right now. Shane doesn't know that, but I appreciate his honesty.
Yeah.
And with that, Kasaya is going to tribal council, and we have this entire saga of Shane telling the rest of the tribe, I want out of here, I want to quit the game. And you get some different perspectives from the Kasaya members. Someone like Suri, a player on the bottom, is saying, if you want to quit, let him quit. We all want to be here. We all want to win the $1 million. If someone does not have that desire, let him go. And I think it's easy for Suri to say that. If you're on the bottom, you're going to do whatever you can to survive in that situation. But I think it's more interesting from the perspective of Shane's allies. Aris eventually convinces Shane to stick it out and stay on the island. But I wanted to ask your thoughts on this. If you're on Survivor and you have an ally saying, I want to quit the game, do you still let them go, or do you try to keep them around as a number?
I think you have to gauge the individual's state of being. Because if you are somebody who is really struggling, you're really homesick, right? But you're not hostile. There's a version of this where you are demoralized but not completely lost, and you can be, you can hang around as a number, you can still contribute a little bit. There's also a situation where, say Shane had been determined to go home, and instead of letting him go, they keep him around. He could actively sabotage them until they let him go, right? There's
like throw challenges, you mean?
Yeah, I think there's a world where he's throwing challenges, where he's, ruining votes, he's blowing up alliances, he's like, it could get really messy. And so you have to gauge how messy you think this will go. Aris doesn't know Shane. This is like day 2 that they've been together. He makes an interesting call, right, by talking him into staying. But I don't know. It really depends on the person, and we'll see how this pans out. I don't think it's going to go well.
Yeah, it's such a difficult decision because Shane could serve as a valuable number for Aris. On top of that, I think if you attempt to quit the game, that almost all the time tanks your chances at winning a jury vote. I feel that way about Shane. I felt that same way about Q back on 46. The second you tell other people you don't want to be there, you're not going to win. If you make it to the end, people won't take you seriously. So maybe from Aris's perspective, he's thinking long term. Shane is someone I can drag to the end. No way he's winning the whole thing. But there's also that concern of working with an unreliable ally. And since you're so early in the game, maybe you're better off spending that time, instead of convincing Shane to stick around, using that time to bring in a new ally, bring in a Melinda, bring in a Suri.
Well, let's talk about what happens instead. Because Shane gets talked into staying. He says, I'm sorry, I haven't had water in 2 days, which seems false. Hold on. How long can you survive without water? 3 days. Nope. He's still standing. You wouldn't be. No. Because that general rule is not taking into account being in a jungle and competing and running around. He has absolutely had water. He's being dramatic. But one more thing to note. Shane walks in to this strategic conversation that, we have right before Tribal. And I noticed something. Shane has a little tramp stamp, a little tattoo on his lower back.
He does?
Oh, yeah. He's got a lot of, well, you can see it in the photo of him with Tyler, the Creator. He's got a lot of little photos, or little tattoos. My question for you, Clyde. If you had to get a tramp stamp, what would it be?
Shane Powers. Right there, right above my ass cheeks. In memory of Shane. That's how loyal I am to this character. How about you? Do you agree? You're going to get Melinda?
I thought what would be very funny for you is outwit, outplay, outlast.
Oh, that's ridiculous. There's definitely somebody that has that. We've covered a contestant who had Survivor tattoos.
Yeah, we have.
What's his name? Cowboy got a Survivor tattoo after competing on Cook Islands.
Yeah, I think if I had to get anything, it'd be tasteful. It'd be like some foliage, something green, something botanical.
Not an animal for the animal shots?
See, here's the thing. The reason I bring this up is I had actually just talked about this at a party this week with some people. And initially, I thought there was a rule that tramp stamps had to be symmetrical. I don't know why. But my first thought, swear to God, was a blue whale.
Yeah, I think it would work if the blue whale's looking head on. That way it's still symmetrical going
No,
down the line.
no, across the side, like it's a horizontal view.
Yeah, like it's swimming over your cheeks is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's where my brain went, but anyway, Shane walks up and says, "Hey, I want to stay. Like, so let's have a conversation." And Aris joins in and says, "Hey, Melinda, Suri, I don't know who I'm going to vote for yet. It's going to be one of you." And Shane chimes in, "Yep, and whoever doesn't go home tonight will go home next. You two are going. That's it." And that's it.
Yeah, it's really bold. It's something that you can do in old school Survivor. You can't do that today because contestants may have idols, they have their shot in the dark. But back in 2006, Melinda and Suri never went to Exile Island. You know they have no tools in their toolkit. If you want to vote them out, they can straight up just go home. I think this is a bad move, not because you're telling the people on the bottom that they're on the bottom. It's bad because you're removing agency from the other people in your alliance. And Courtney complains about this in confessional. They never had a discussion over who they're going to vote out. They have that core 4-person alliance, but there's still 3 outsiders. Bobby is technically an outsider, and his name is never even brought up.
Bobby?
Isn't that his name?
Bruce.
No, Bobby. Bobby's on this tribe too.
Wait, what? Bobby doesn't speak.
Yeah, Bobby doesn't say anything. But technically, he's outside the core 4. He could go home here, but I think just because he's a stronger physical competitor,
they're not
keep
concerned.
him around.
Yeah. Man, I completely missed that he's even on this tribe because he does not speak in this episode.
So, want to go to Tribal?
Yeah, we go to Tribal, and we have a moment, right? Shane is miserable. He's like, "This is the worst thing I've ever done. I hate this. This sucks, blah, blah, blah." Melinda and Suri are like, "We want to be here. We are here to compete. We are here to be a part of this game," right? Suri cries at the possibility of going home. She has a touching moment where she says, "My family would be really disappointed in me going home this early. And not that they would be disappointed for how hard I've tried, but I would be disappointed for my performance and for how I would show up for them," right? And it's tough, right? Because nobody seems receptive to actually putting up some numbers and working with her and Melinda. For some reason. This feels like a classic old Survivor mentality of first thought, best thought. We're going to go with strength over perceived weakness, and we'll just do that until it doesn't work. Well, hey, we didn't have time to have a lot of conversations. Let's take out the older woman who doesn't seem like an asset in challenges.
Yeah. I do think it's somewhat facilitated by the starting tribes, though. Had Melinda and Suri gotten the opportunity to start and meet Shane, meet Aris, meet some of these other players before the swap, then they have an opportunity to build those inroads and survive this tribal council. But because of the way the game was structured, I think they were put at a disadvantage last week and this week. The only other highlight I have from tribal council before we get to the vote is that Shane sits with his back to Melinda for most of the tribal. Now,
I missed
when
that.
When you get the zoom out shots, Shane is sitting forward facing Jeff. But when Melinda is speaking, you can tell that Shane's back is to her. And I think that's his way of,
rude.
Mentally justifying voting her out. Doesn't make
sucks.
a lot of sense to me, but just an interesting detail right there.
Yeah.
Your final vote, it's a 5-2, 5 on Melinda, 2 on Shane. Melinda is sent out of the door. Do you think she comes back to Survivor?
No, I don't.
She does not. Not a lot of info on Melinda post-Survivor. In 2006, she appeared on the daytime soap opera Guiding Light alongside Suri Fields. Melinda played a waitress on that episode. So
that show aired for 57 years. For 19 years, it was broadcast. Oh my God, it started as a radio show. Guiding Light began airing in 1937 on the radio. For 4 years, it was on the radio and TV. This is crazy.
It's wild that Melinda, out of all people, got a spot on it. You would think if you're going to bring a Survivor player on, you would do one of the big names from the season, but they brought on, Suri, who at least made it 2 episodes, and Melinda, who went out second.
With 72 years of radio and television runs, longest running American soap opera. The show ran for so long that it had different main characters take over.
Oh, yeah. Well, you have to. If you're running it for 70 years, you can't roll with the same main character every time.
Clyde, it broadcast its 15,000th episode in 2006. It started focused on the sermons of a radio minister from Chicago. The sermons inspired the creation of the show, which began with a minister as the central character. I want to watch this so bad.
Good for Melinda.
That's good for Melinda. That's kind of fun.
Anything else before we go to winners and losers?
No, that's all I've got.
Okay, where do you want to start?
Let's do winners, because I feel like the loser is really easy. Well, let's do losers and knock it out.
Loser, I'm giving it to Suri. I can't give it to Shane here. I know you'll probably give it to Shane, but let me give you the Suri case.
Okay.
I'm a Suri fan, but she's at a pretty difficult point in the season right now. She's clearly on the bottom of the Kasaya tribe. I think her only hope moving forward is that Bruce comes in, Bruce self-implodes, and she's able to throw him under the bus. But as it stands right now, Shane straight up told her before Tribal Council, one of you is going home this week, and the other one is going home at the next Tribal Council. It feels like Suri's going to need to do some serious work to dig herself out of this spot, and she lost another ally. She started the game with 4 people on her tribe, and she's already lost 2 of them.
That's fair. Let me push back on that. Suri is a famous player. I don't believe she's losing this game before the merge. I think if she goes home in the final 6. Okay? That's my take. And I don't want to be biased by outside knowledge, but I am. The storyline...
If you weren't, you would call her the loser. Because she lost the most this week.
The storyline I see here is Shane imploding, and here's why Shane is my loser. This tribe is not going anywhere. Shane's going to continue to implode, and everyone else is going to get sick of it. The younger women in his alliance are going to abandon him. Hopefully, Bobby speaks up. Bruce speaks up. Bobby, Bruce, Suri, and at least one of the younger women, that's an easy majority, right? I see this going south for Shane, hopefully. So that's why he's my loser, and I think Suri can turn things around.
There is reason to be worried with Shane, but given that the Alliance didn't, give up on him this week, I don't have a lot of evidence to suggest that they'll do that moving forward. Winner is Aris. Aris wanted to keep that core 4 together, and he successfully did it. You can question if it's the right strategy or not, but Aris had a goal, and he correctly executed on it. So I think he's in a solid spot, where even if Shane self-implodes and he bounces, Aris, I think, will still have other opportunities on that tribe, especially since there's this overarching idea that we need to keep the tribe strong, and Aris is probably their strongest physical competitor.
Okay. I can see it. Interesting. I can see it. That's fine. My winner goes to the Flight Boys. I'm giving the older men on the other tribe, Dan and Terry.
You gotta pick one. You can't give it to both of them. No,
I'm giving it to both of them.
We've never done 2 players receiving the winner.
Unprecedented, but I can't distinguish them.
You gotta pick one.
I'll give it to Dan the astronaut because he's been to space. Okay, that's not a good reason, but he's my winner because he's in a strong alliance with a lot of protection. I see the older men doing well on Lamina, and I'm giving him the winner because he's in a really secure spot where Aris is in the shit show tribe.
Okay, that's fair. We just need to keep the rules solid, at least for the winners and losers.
Fine.
If you want to take creative liberties with the honorable mention, I'll allow it. But the second I'm letting you give 2 people the winner in a single episode, that's where we descend into chaos. Because then I'm giving Shane the winner in addition to Aris. I got a dishonorable mention this week. I did a little bit of research for this one. I misread what Courtney said earlier in the episode. I thought Playboy Liquor was straight up a liquor store, which it is in Los Angeles, California. And that liquor store is getting my dishonorable mention. It currently has 2.9 stars on Yelp. and I read through some of their reviews, and this one was one of my favorites. It came from 3 years ago. Quote, "I don't leave reviews, my guy. I'm an alcoholic, and I know my liquor. I've already seen the reviews for fake vapes, so it's no surprise they have fake liquor as well. I bought a Hennessy, and it tasted like some old man's stale Hennessy. I know what Hennessy tastes like. I drink a bottle a day. This was not Hennessy. 1 star."
I drink a bottle a day is crazy.
Hey, if I'm going on Yelp for a liquor store review, I want an expert in liquor stores. And this guy checks that box. So, sorry, Playboy Liquor.
That is fantastic. 10 out of 10. That is really, really great. Wow. That I don't know if I can follow that, but it's really spectacular.
Well, I had to come up with something after you did a 5-minute monologue last week about heads in Panama.
Well, buckle up, buddy.
Is that your honorable mention again?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not reusing.
Well, you had the zombie head this week.
Yeah, that was fun. My honorable mention, though, goes to the concept of endemism.
Okay.
Have you ever heard the word endemic?
Yes.
Do you know what it means?
Is it related to the spread of something?
Sort of. So, it's one of those words that, like, you hear and you're like, I understand how it fits in a sentence, and I kind of understand what you're saying, but I don't fully get it, right? In context, you can go like, I get it, but it's not a word that I would have used because I didn't really know what it means. While researching Panama a little bit further, I learned that they have a ton of endemic species because 40% of Panama is jungle that is incredibly fertile, right? It's so close to the equator. It's incredibly wild and unharmed, right? It's a very, very green place. To be endemic to a place is not only to come from a place, but to exclusively be from one place, right?
Okay.
So to be endemic is to be found in one single geographic location. So it's not the same as indigenous, right? Because indigenous means you're from somewhere, but you can go somewhere else. To be endemic means that's it. You are in this place alone, which I think is kind of an interesting thing because in the world we live in today, you know what the only thing is that's endemic?
I can't even think of anything that's endemic.
I'll tell you. New Era Survivor. It's endemic. They've given up. They're endemic to Fiji. They're not going anywhere else.
Oh, man.
So I brought it back around, baby. That's all I've got.
I was thinking of animals and species. I didn't account for the actual Survivor part of it. Man, that's a good one, though.
Next time we see a bunch of tension, screaming, there's fighting in a challenge. It's going to be some good classic Survivor stuff. I'm excited for next week.
Yeah, we have a snippet of Shane yelling on a stump. We have another one of the women on the Lamina tribe massaging the men on the Lamina tribe. So we might get some showmances next week as well. So we're filming this in June, but might be a Valentine's Day themed episode. We'll see. But thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week for episode 3.
Peace.